Good evening. Topic is corporate social responsibility, CSR. It's an interesting topic and is linked to many things. Why do you don't want to work? Let's hide this. So the topic is evaluate the moral aspects of leadership. So all of you are leaders. Right? And doing a master's, so people listen to you. So leaders don't need to be politicians. Now, so corporate social responsibility is the name that is better known. You conscience that is more on the side rather than the social side, but is to be ethical. The other citizen and responsible business as well takes into account the ethical issues. So corporate conscience and responsible business speaks more about the ethical aspects, and then corporate social responsibility of corporations more of the relationship with the society. So depends do you want to use. But normally people speak about corporate social responsibility. For some people, corporate responsibility is name because it's whitewashing. You do something wrong and then you just give something to a school or you give a donation to church and then you are clean, okay, in spite of what you do. So why do we have to speak about corporate social responsibility? Well, responsibility is something ethical, and it could be by design. So the company, by design, it has to improve society, otherwise not good. But many times it's because some people have very bad things suffer. So it's better to consider it by design. So corporations, we know, are a legal entity that is separated and distinct from the owners. So this was devised in Britain at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. So before responsible for everything, and it was the person handling the business or the group of persons handling the business. So if the business was down, then they will the things. Now, when they create a corporation, then the assets of the people are different. So then they have the right personality, legal person. So it can buy, borrow, sue, hire employees, be sued, change, but the corporation continues going. So if you think of corporations like Ford Motors, more years, but the owners are completely different. So corporations have a longer life. Now there is a documentary called The Corporation. Documentary that corporations do wrong. So what they do is analyze what they all of them showing how they fit that maniac person. It's long, so I only use some to highlight things.
"150 years ago, the business corporation was a relatively insignificant institution. Today, it is all pervasive. Like the church, the monarchy, and the Communist Party in other times and places, the corporation is today's dominant institution. This documentary examines the nature, evolution, impacts, and possible futures of the modern business corporation. Initially given a narrow legal mandate, what has allowed today's corporation to achieve such extraordinary power and influence over our lives? We begin our inquiry as scandals threaten to trigger a wide debate about the lack of public control over big corporations.
I do think there is an overhang over the market of distrust. Listen, 95% or some percentage, huge percentage of the business community are honest and reveal all their assets. And got compensation programs that are balanced, but there are some bad acts.
The media debate about the basic operating principles of the corporate world was quickly reduced to a game of follow the leader.
I still happen to think the United States is the greatest place in the world to invest. And we have some shakeups that are going on because of a few bad apples.
Some people call me a bad apple. Well, I may be bruised, but I still taste sweet. Some people call me a bad apple, but I may be the sweetest apple on the tree.
These are not just a bunch of bad apples.
This is just a few bad apples.
It's not just a few bad apples.
We've got to get rid of the bad apples. You can start with Tyco.
Bad apples.
We know all about WorldCom.
Bad apples.
Xerox Corporation.
Bad apples.
Arthur Anderson.
Bad apples.
Enron, obviously.
Bad apples.
Kmart Corporation.
The fruit cart is getting a little more full.
I don't think it's just a few apples, unfortunately. I think this is the worst crisis of confidence in business.
What's wrong with this picture? Can't we pick a better metaphor to describe the dominant institution of our time? Through the voices of CEOs, whistleblowers, brokers, gurus and spies, insiders and outsiders, we present the corporation as a paradox, an institution that creates great wealth but causes enormous and often hidden harm.
As part of a jigsaw in society as a whole, which if you remove it, the picture's incomplete. But equally, if it's the only part, it's not going to work.
A sports team. Some of us are blocking and tackling, some of us are running the ball, some of us are throwing the ball, but we all have a common purpose, which is to succeed as an organization.
A corporation is like a family unit. People in a corporation work together for a common end.
Like the telephone system, it reaches almost everywhere. It's extraordinarily powerful. It's pretty hard to avoid. And it transforms the lives of people, I think, on balance, for the better.
The eagle, soaring, clear-eyed, competitive, prepared to strike, but not a vulture. Noble, visionary, majestic, that people can believe in and be inspired by, that creates such a lift that it soars. I could see that being a good logo for the principal company.
Well, okay, guys, enough bullshit.
Corporations are artificial creations. You might say they're monsters trying to devour as much profit as possible at anyone's expense.
Dr. Frankenstein's creation has overwhelmed and overpowered him, as the corporate form has done with us.
Corporate gets attached in almost, in a pejorative sense to, and it gets married with the word agenda.
and one hears a lot about the corporate agenda, as though it is evil, as though it is an agenda which is trying to take over the world. Personally, I don't use the word corporation. I use the word business. I will use the word company. I'll use the words business community, because I think that is a much fairer representation than zeroing in on just this word corporation.
What is a corporation? It's funny that I've taught in a business school for as long as I have without ever having been asked so pointedly to say what I think a corporation is. It is one form of business ownership.
Mute and get the sound is better.
Together to serve a variety of objectives, the principal one of which is earning large, growing, sustained, legal returns for the people who own the business.
The modern corporation has grown out of the industrial age. The industrial age began in 1712 when an Englishman named Thomas Newcomen invented a steam-driven pump to pump water out of the English coal mines so the English coal miners could get it more coal to mine rather than hauling buckets of water out of the mine. It was all about productivity, more coal per man hour. That was the dawn of the industrial age. And then it became more steel per man hour, more textiles per man hour, more automobiles per man hour. And today it's more chips per man hour, more gizmos per man hour. The system is basically the same, producing more sophisticated products today.
The dominant role of corporations in our lives is essentially a product of roughly the past century. Corporations were originally associations of people who were chartered by a state to perform some particular function, like a group of people want to build a bridge over the Charles River or something like that.
In both the law and the culture, the corporation was considered a subordinate entity that was a gift from the people in order to serve the public good. So you have that history, and we shouldn't be misled by it. It's not as if those were the halcyon days when all corporations served the public trust, but there's a lot to learn from that.
The Civil War and the Industrial Revolution created enormous growth in corporations. And so there was an explosion of railroads who got large federal subsidies of land, banking, heavy manufacturing, and corporate lawyers a century and a half ago realized they needed more power to operate and wanted to remove some of the constraints that had historically been placed on the corporate form.
The 14th Amendment was passed at the end of the Civil War to give equal rights to black people. And therefore, it said no state can deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. And that was intended to prevent the states from taking away life, liberty, or property from black people, as they had done for so much of our history. And what happens is the corporations come into court, and corporation lawyers are very clever, and they say, oh, you can't deprive a person of life, liberty, or property. We are a person. A corporation is a person. And the Supreme Court goes along with that.
And what was particularly grotesque about this was that the 14th Amendment was passed to protect newly freed slaves. So, for instance, between 1890 and 1910, there were 307 cases brought before the court under the 14th Amendment. 288 of these brought by corporations, 19 by African Americans. $600,000 people were killed
to get rights for people. And then with strokes of the pen over the next 30 years, judges applied those rights to capital and property while stripping them from people.
Everybody makes a mistake once in a while, but I just can't be personally responsible. That's one of the weaknesses of a partnership, isn't it, Sid?
Well, maybe you better incorporate the store.
Incorporate?
Yes. Incorporating would give you the big advantage of what you want right now. Limited liability. You start with a group of people who want to invest their money in a company. Then these people apply for a charter as a corporation. This government issues a charter to that corporation. Now that corporation operates legally as an individual person. It is not a group of people. It is under the law a legal person.
Imperial Steel Incorporated has many of the legal rights of a person. It can buy and sell property. It can borrow money. It can sue in court and be sued. It carries on a business. Imperial Steel, along with thousands of other legal persons, is a part of our daily living. It is a member of our society.
Having acquired the legal rights and protections of a person, the question arises, what kind of person is the corporation?
Corporations were given the rights of immortal persons, but then special kinds of persons, persons who have no moral conscience. These are a special kind of persons which are designed by law to be concerned only for their stockholders and not, say, what are sometimes called their stakeholders, like the community or the workforce or whatever.
The great problem of having corporate citizens is that they aren't like the rest of us. As Baron Thurlow in England is supposed to have said, they have no soul to save and they have no body to incarcerate.
I believe the mistake that a lot of people make when they think about corporations is they think, corporations are like us.
General Electric is a kind old man with lots of stories.
Nike, young, energetic.
Microsoft, aggressive.
McDonald's, young, outgoing, enthusiastic.
Monsanto, immaculately dressed.
Disney, goofy. The Body Shop, deceptive.
Very lovely.
You know what the Body Shop is?
Nope.
They think they have feelings, they have politics, they have belief systems. They really only have one thing, the bottom line. How to make as much money as they can in any given quarter. That's it.
Of course they make a profit, and it's a good thing. That's the incentive that makes capitalism work, to give us more of the things that we need. That's the incentive that other economic systems lack.
People accuse us of only paying attention to the economic leg because they think that's what a business person's mindset is. It's just money. And it's not so, because we as business people know that we need to certainly address the environment, but also we need to be seen as constructive members of society.
There are companies that do good for the communities. They produce services and goods that are of value to all of us, that make our lives better, and that's a good thing. The problem comes in the profit motivation here, because these people, there's no such thing as enough.
And I always point out there's no organization on this planet that can neglect its economic foundation. Even someone living under a banyan tree is dependent on support from someone. The economic leg has to be addressed by everyone. It's not just a business issue.
But, unlike someone under a banyan tree, all publicly traded corporations have been structured through a series of legal decisions to have a peculiar and disturbing characteristic. They are required by law to place the financial interests of their owners above competing interests. In fact, the corporation is legally bound to put its bottom line ahead of everything else, even the public good.
That's not a law of nature. That's a very specific decision, in fact, a judicial decision. So they're concerned only for the short-term profit of their stockholders.
To whom do these companies owe loyalty? What does loyalty mean? Well, it turns out that was a rather naive concept anyway, as corporations are always owed obligation to themselves to get large and to get profitable. In doing this, it tends to be more profitable to the extent it can make other people pay the bills for its impact on society. There's a terrible word that economists use for this called externalities.
An externality is the effect of a transaction between two individuals on a third party who has not consented to or played any role in the carrying out of that transaction. And there are real problems in that area, there's no doubt about it.
Running a business is a tough proposition. There are costs to be minimized at every turn. And at some point, the corporation says, let somebody else deal with that. Let's let somebody else supply the military power to the Middle East to protect the oil at its source. Let's let somebody else build the roads that we can drive these automobiles on. Let's let somebody else have those problems. And that is where externalities come from. That notion of let somebody else deal with that. I got all I can handle myself.
A corporation is an externalizing machine in the same way that a shark is a killing machine. Each one is designed in a very efficient way to accomplish particular objectives. In the achievement of those objectives, there isn't any question of malevolence or of will. The enterprise has within it, and the shark has within it, those characteristics that enable it to do that.
Okay, as you see, corporations are bad, according to the movie. And it's true. So some corporations have really messed up society. Why? Because they have a lot of power. So they buy politicians when politicians can be bought. They abuse their power with the employees. And sometimes they do not do many things. So what are the relationships between corporations and society? In principle, a corporation is a part of society. So there are societies within societies. It's like a village, it's part of a nation or part of a country. So there is a clear relationship. Now, as such, then society should regulate corporations, not the other way around. And that is the principle of common good, which is one of the 6 principles or social ethical principles. So the common good is to be understood the sum total of social conditions which allow people, either as group or individuals, to reach the fulfillment more fully and more easily. So a society in which everybody tries to improve and helps everybody to improve, that is the common good. Now, the common good depends on the purpose of society. So the common good of the country is that every one of us can be our best. And we are very different. So it's not that they are going to manage me. It's that going to provide the security and the safety and the freedom that I need in order to do my things. But they don't have to tell me what to study or how to live or where to live and how many children to have. No, that's not the common good. The common good is to allow me to develop myself as much as I can. Now, if I join a music society, the common good of that society is to help me to be as good as I can in music. So they give me the instruments, they have the trainers, so the common good is to help everybody in that society be as good as they can in music. If it is an economic society, be creating as much wealth as possible. So now the common good that has that definition has three different interpretations, which are the three macro economies that run the countries. So one is the individualistic. That is the one that we have seen in the movie of the corporation, sharks. So swimming with sharks. So only the big shark eats the small sharks. So this is the Darwinian kind of evolutionary approach to economics and therefore to society. So let the best win. And that is good for society because then, so the theory says, we all improve because we are all competing and we are trying our best, and then the best will be the most economical, the one who creates more wealth, etc. That is ideal if everybody was honest. Now, the society is the opposite approach, which is says, look, yes, let everybody be as good as they can, and for that we have to avoid people exploiting other people. So let's take over and run the show. The state runs the show. And we organize society in a way we tell everybody what is good. So that is the socialistic approach. Now the personalistic approach is telling these two people, say, look, you're only bothered about economics. And we have much more economics. So people don't have a price. People are people and they have more than economics. Economics is a way of living, is a way of organizing, but it's the means that we need to be more personal, to be more relationship. Everybody has a value. We cannot control them. We cannot step on them. So those are the three. So the individualistic approach started with the Industrial Revolution in force in the modern times, at the end of the 18th century, beginning of the 19th century, and the great kind of ideologist was a philosopher who used to teach ethics. And in order, he says, okay, the most important thing for people to develop is that they are not poor. So in order for them not to be poor, then we have to develop the economy. And how do we develop the economy? By the division of power. So the division of work, sorry. So we specialize in different areas, then we will be more productive. So, and then he said, and the private interest is what moves people to do things. So let's foster the private interest, and then there will be an invisible hand. So in spite of their natural selfishness and rapidity, business people are led by an invisible hand, and thus without intending it, without knowing it, advance the interest of society. So if people really struggle to be the best and to, then society really has an incentive and society will benefit. So we will see how that develops eventually. So he intends only his own gain, led by invisible hand to promote an end which is not part of his intentions. He says, okay, competition will balance itself. And then people will come a time, everything is balanced. And how, you don't know, it's invisible, the force of the market. And now they are saying the force of the market. So what does Adam Smith say? So limited government. So let people organize themselves. So be entrepreneur. Let them free. So free competition, and free competition that is motivated by the self-interest, which for him was not selfishness. So, for example, the United States of America is one of the countries that donates more money to charities than any other country, and they are the top individualistic, so to speak, country in the world. Then you need private property to develop your business, private property in order to be free. Because if you depend on somebody else, you're not free. If your sources of income to keep your family afloat, to educate your family, to take care of the health of your family, you depend on somebody else, free. So you have to have a way that you can maintain yourself, maintain your family. And poverty is not necessarily land. It can be a factory, it can be a car, it can be a plane, it can be shares, and economic freedom. So in last century, in the greatest economy, yes, you have a question?
No, I don't think it worked from the principle of self-interest.
Mm-hmm.
And, when you consider the bottom line, and now that derives the shareholder principle. So, what would regulate the individual, the individualistic interpretation of common good to actually, given that you're working, there's a principle of self-interest, but now in the real sense, profit always what becomes self-interest.
Mm-hmm.
It's very hard to divorce an aspect of selfishness from self-interest. What would?
Well, one thing is self-interest, another thing is greed. So I'm interested that the Strasbourg I surplus. Because if not, it cannot build up, it cannot renew the equipment, it cannot increase the salary for all the. But I'm not selfish. I'm doing it for staff, for the students, for the community. But you have to have a profit, otherwise you close the company. There is no company. Yeah? You have to work. That's different. So self-interest is different from selfishness. So, and what do? You do the things that you're interested in because they appeal to you, they motivate you. And you have to live, you have to eat, you have to sleep, you have to have holidays. So, and that you are interested. But family. Do the parents act on their self-interest? Yeah. Is that bad? No. But their self-interest is for the interest of the family, interest of the children, interest of the extended family. They are not selfish. So there will be selfish if each of them wants the benefit for himself without considering the others.
The question is, how applicable
Yeah, there is no problem. So think, for example, a company like Safaricom. I'm not defending Safaricom, but then has it improved society enormously? And are they making money? Are they using that money for buying supercars, private jets? No. Right? So they are not greedy. Mm-hmm. Now there are other companies that yes, they squeeze everybody and they want more money, more money, more money, houses, plots, buy big cars that they don't use. So that is greed. Mm-hmm. Okay. So now Milton Friedman was very much against corporate social responsibility based on ethics. He says the social responsibility of business is to increase its profits. What does it mean to say that business has responsibilities? Only people can have responsibilities. In a free society, there is only and one social responsibility of business: to use its resources and engage in activities designed to increase its profits so long as it stays within the rules of the game, which is to say engage in open and free competition without deception. So his argument is the following. Look, shares of Kenya Airways. So what do I want from Kenya Airways? The yield as much as possible, as many returns as possible. I'm not interested in the type of business they are doing. What I want is that my shares go up in value. So when I buy shares, what I am interested is in the returns of those shares, the dividends that they give. And I want the company to do good. Now, if the CEO wants to do charity, let him do charity from his pocket, not from the company. And that is justice. So I have invested my little money into shares, and he is spending money into charities that I'm not interested in. I'm interested in the dividends. So he wants to build a school. Okay, he's earning a lot of money. Let him use that money, but not the money of the shareholders. So that is the argument of Milton Friedman, which makes sense. Mm-hmm. Makes a lot of sense. Now, so the stream capitalism is that one, in the sense, okay, what a company has to do is to produce profit as much as possible. And for that, use all the possible means. Now, what happens that if you have that mentality, you employ people, you employ managers. So the shareholders meet, if there are few, and then they decide which managers to employ. So the managers are agents of the owners. And then what do the managers have to do? To produce as much profit as possible. And they are employed to do that. So they are agents of the shareholders. So this theory is called the shareholder theory. So the shareholder theory is the duty of the managers in a company is to produce as much profit as possible. And okay, this we have seen. If laissez-faire means let them do whatever they want, provided that they follow the rules. Free market economy. So no monopolies, no privileged people. Capitalism, economics, self-interest, individualism. Okay, all these things are related to capitalism. So the clear country that follows that pattern is America, the United States of America, and some other countries that are modeling on them. But I cannot think in really any other. Can you think of any other country that is really individualistic? Kenya. Okay. Now, the one who followed the theory, there were two leaders that were clearly following Milton Friedman, which was Reagan. So Reagan said the government is not the solution to the problem, the government is the problem. Why? Because it's regulating, it's interfering with the freedom of Americans. And therefore they produce less because they cannot be entrepreneurs. So he started eliminating many of the regulations that his predecessors were giving to the central government and gave it back to the states, the different states. Government view of the economy could be summed as a few short phrases. If it moves, that's it. If it keeps moving, regulate it. And if it stops moving, subsidize it. So he was clearly against intervention of the government in the economy. Now, the socialistic interpretation. The text is the same, but then the communists think that they have to really take over so that they make everybody equal. And this is Marx, a letter to his father, this is young Marx. History calls those men the greatest who have ennobled themselves by working for the common good. Experience acclaims as happy as the man who has made the greatest number of people happy. But in order to make people happy, everybody has to do the same. And then what he says is the individual doesn't count. What counts is society. So you lose all your freedom in a communist country. And man himself is of no value. So if you don't toe the line, you are an enemy of the people. And if you are an enemy of the people, you have to be corrected or eliminated, like a cancer. And that is, well, the highest numbers of people killed in the history of the 20th century has been by the communist countries. China, millions of people. Russia, millions of people. Cambodia, I think a couple of, well, million of people as well. So, because for them, the humans have no value. If you don't want to be equal, just disappear. We don't need you. So the communists, if they conceal their views and aims, they openly declare the end can be attained only by the forcible overthrow of all existing social conditions. Let the ruling class tremble as a communist revolution. The proletarians have nothing to lose but their change. They have a world to win. Working men of all countries unite. So this was a reaction to the excesses of the Industrial Revolution at the beginning, when the labor was really mistreated. There were people coming from the fields to work in the factories, and then they will work, men and women, 12 hours, 14 hours, 16 hours. Children will work the same number of hours, and no security whatsoever. If you got sick, that was your problem. If you got injured, no compensation, and very little pay. So what is the cause, according to the communists, and before Rousseau, and maybe Kant as well? So private property. So private property is what makes people to be different. Some people have more, some people have less, some people don't have anything. So the proletarians, he called them proletarians because the only thing that they have is the prolet, which is the children. So this is the extreme socialism, which is the communism. And then the state takes care of everything. So the education of children, more than education, is indoctrination. You have to follow everything according to the government. And who is the government? The government is the Communist Party. And if you don't belong to the Communist Party, you are out of business. So civil government so far instituted for the security property, really instituted for the defense of the rich against the poor, or for those who have some property against those who have not all. So this is not from Marx. This is from Adam Smith. Marx took quite a lot from under Adam Smith. So in the economy and in the constitution of society. So Mao is another one that people think that between 60 and 80 million people died during his regime. So we have the communists as the extreme socialism, we have the capitalism as the extreme freedom in market, and then we have in between some socialisms that have something of free market and have something as well of control from the government. So the National Socialist, the Nazi Party was National Socialism, and then we have some socialisms in Europe as well. And then this is what excerpt of one of the public speaking occasions in a university of Milton Friedman.
The belief in equality as opposed to liberty. And I wonder, is it possible to build a system based on this equality, which I believe that many people agree in, and would not be willing to sacrifice to the liberty of freedom promised?
Well, I'm not going to be able to give a full answer to your question because you've asked a very, very complex question, and so you're going to have to pardon me if I am a little dogmatic, but I only want to suggest that the statements I'm making are not without some thought and reason behind them. In my opinion, a society that aims for equality before liberty will end up with neither equality nor liberty. And a society that aims first for liberty will not end up with equality, but it will end up with a closer approach to equality than any other kind of system that has ever been developed. Now, that conclusion is based both on evidence from history, across history, and also, I believe, on reasoning which, if you try to follow through the implications of aiming first at equality, will become clear to you. You can only aim at equality by giving some people the right to take things from others. And what ultimately happens when you aim at equality is that A and B decide what C shall do for D. Except that they take a little bit of a commission off on the way.
So what is he saying? What he's saying is that there are you in society, the politicians, well, the people in society, not only the politicians, have two things. One is equality, and the other is freedom. Now, to balance these two things is not easy. The more freedom you give, so if you maximize freedom, you minimize equality. If you maximize equality, you minimize freedom. From Rwanda. Is free. You can do what you want. Without without this, that, and so but to organize the sequence people to balance freedom and equality is not an easy thing. But clearly, if you want equality, total equality, then freedom disappears. And we see that in the countries that are too much on equality. North Korea, you say, well, is equality there? Yeah. Whatsoever. Anyway, so you have this is between total freedom or every or peer is better. And the max. Then we one. Another so Maritain was a philosopher, a French philosopher. He lived for a long time, had a kind of romantic life because he was the son of people who were atheistic, they didn't practice religion, and then he found the biology and sciences, and then he found there another a girl that the Russians they didn't practice anything either. So the two of them, the university, they for you. life. So they promise each other that if in a year they didn't find a meaning for life, they will kill themselves. Fortunately, they had a plan to started things. We can help them to discover the meaning of life. Then we became Catholics, and unfortunately, children, because when sick, normal, he was a poet as well. Look, in order so we cannot just be selfish, negate, or we have to reduce to society. Because that are humans. So each and every person is one. So because these children are disabled, we just do away with them. Or in communist countries, because you don't toe the line, we do away with you. No, wait a moment. The most important thing on earth is every single person. No matter if they are mad, no matter if they are sick. And the person is social. We are persons. Each person is only happy making other people happy. Any society is for the person, for each the person in that society. So if we get together, is to make ourselves better, and contribute to do together what we cannot do alone. And so society is for the person, not the person for society. It is money and means. If you want to do charity, do it from your pocket, not from the company. What do the companies pay? Here's what the people say. You don't have private property, so if you work hard, then you can contribute. Because why? You are of society, and the society is to help. Or the government doesn't have money. The government doesn't. And how do we get the money from business? NGOs don't produce money. How do they survive? By the money we give to them voluntarily. So who is the creator of wealth? So business people are done in order to contribute to society, but of course they have anything to corporate society. That is how we contribute to society. So if the people of our so another definition is to do better. Not a business. So you cannot be the photo with the product, but with the profit, your profit. So this is another way of looking at it, right? To be profitable, economic responsibilities, what is project, for example. This is another way to put the same, but more just community, workplace, marketplace, environment development. So that's the end of you. You cannot do any other thing.
The question about the ethics of if a person is a chicken from the neighbor because their children Yes. So,
That in the Catholic Church is not considered set. It's considered survival. And you cannot die, you cannot allow people to die. So private property has a limit. The need. So you cannot have bags or your neighbor is dying of hunger. That is not society. So if you from Spain, there was a betting that was regulated by the government, and then I don't know. To say, well, how can be they're making a lot of money. They make give money to these guys. There is no society in Kenya.
But Kenya is not a society.
No. I didn't say that. I say that Kenya is not a nation. It is 52 different nations. But Kenya is a society of 52 different nations. If you understand. Okay. Thank you for the clarification. So why people say not CSR? Manage time in the company. So, not them as much or not. They should. So that clearly takes away the people from the business. That's what may appear cosmetic without genuine social. So you give money to school, but you know that it's going to be misused. But you appear in the newspaper giving a check. And then people say, oh, how good company. Well, you don't care about the school, you don't care about it. Of people may make an organization more vulnerable to violation of bad ethical business practices. That it's risky. But imagine to some is contaminated. So now you are taking, you have to pay a hell of a lot of money. You wanted to do good, but or I don't know, you somebody and kills 6 people, as it happened yesterday. Then people say, you are a company being people to bad people. So there are risks there. So you say, So what are the two theories that we have seen? Shareholders and stakeholders. So the shareholder says it's unjust to use others' money. Use your private money, corporation, take care of those issues. To take calculation. That's it. Okay. So they want return, give them as much returns as. And then what corporation is the principle not only to physical and it's good because they know that you are doing their best and they trust you. They don't know what that. Again, treatment. So, okay. Everybody. In a very kind of
business absolutely has responsibilities to communities. Business exists within communities. The Whole Foods Market has stores all around the country. Right now we're in Austin.
what is happening here. This should be working. I know. It may be the PowerPoint. This was PowerPoint. No, it's the share of screen. Here, the PowerPoint.
Business absolutely has responsibilities to...
What is happening here? Okay, let's save it as the media and use another program.
Nevertheless, time will prove what I'm saying is true.
You mentioned last night that you believe that businesses are part of the community, treated as an individual that can tax them.
What is happening with the sound? Could be here.
I love that. Could you share that same?
Business absolutely has responsibilities to communities. Business exists within communities. Nevertheless, time will prove what I'm saying is true.
You mentioned last night that you believe that businesses are part of the community, treated as an individual that can taxes, and they have a responsibility. I love that. Could you share that same message with us?
Business absolutely has responsibilities to communities. Business exists within communities. Whole Foods Market has stores all around the country. Right now we're in Austin, Texas. We have 2 stores here. We are best thought of as citizens in those communities. And as citizens, we have responsibilities to the community. The community doesn't merely exist to service Whole Foods Market. Whole Foods cannot be separate from the community. We have to live and exist within that community, and we have to be responsible for that community since we're there existing in it. The mistake people make is they think either business has no responsibility whatsoever to communities, or it has some kind of infinite responsibility. And obviously, this is an individual citizen doesn't have infinite responsibilities, and nor does it have no responsibilities. Business, like individual citizens, has responsibilities in its communities. And I believe that it's not only the local communities where the business exists, but also the communities in which it trades in. In other words, it extends out and throughout the world, if you're trading throughout the world, as Whole Foods is. So I don't believe governmental bureaucracies are going to solve most of the problems that we have in the world today. It's a huge mistake to put our faith and confidence and dependence on governmental bureaucracies. They've had a remarkably bad track record of solving human problems. But I do think individuals, not-for-profit organizations, and the private sector, corporations and businesses, have much more potential to solve most of the problems in the world than governmental bureaucracies will. They're capable of greater entrepreneurship in a way that a bureaucracy is not capable of. So I really think business needs to step up to the plate and begin to take its share of the civic load that exists in the world. There are serious problems in the world, and business, if capitalism would apply its entrepreneurship and its creativity to solving the world's problems, I really believe most of them could be solved in a fairly short period of time.
You mentioned some things that get your employees on fire, gets them rocking and roll. What gets you just gets the goose?
I got it. What one interested in that? Let's see this next, and we'll ask you some questions. Okay, the myths surrounding CSR is not for a small business, it's too complicated and technical, it's too expensive, it's a market gimmick, it's a separate corporate initiative. Before we go into it, I would like to know, your company is no. Well, used to have, eh?
We have, but not in the normal way. Once they are checked out of class, we don't charge them the software payments for like. Then we are supposed to pay $1 million committed to this. Yes, large.
That looks more than marketing than CSR. No, the government. Nothing?
Yes.
What type of thing?
For example, we have a hub in Rwanda to fund youth projects. We also have some kind of initiative in South Africa for helping orphans and is also the culture.
What is the participation of the employees on that?
All separate from the employees.
Is that separate? Okay, so it's something separate. What type of thing?
Trying the way it's structured by identifying a community need. So they're basically fully qualified for the start. For example, if you have and then you can only give the start or if it's at the level that there is the structure. We have branches where working at PWR. So each department has to go in the number of PIs.
And the employees are involved. Okay, very interesting. The same. You got that? Next time. Okay. So let's see next one. That is for a small business. Why? But they have agreed that 10% of the profit at the end of the year, they give it to a school, they give to an orphanage, they give, and it's very little money, but it's 10% of the profit. To do CSR, it can be, you can give 100,000 sheets. Complicated technical, no. This is not complicated. or servicing boreholes is not that complicated. So it's not really technology. Then it's a market. We're going to see that in the triple bottom line report, and it's a separate corporate. That okay, science is related. Corporate. When we come, we will continue with, and then we will do some exercise for corporate social responsibility. Sorry.